thank you very much for coming today. This is the last guest in our 39th year. In September we will begin our 40th season of the Letters and Arts reading series, a society that is under the umbrella of Fanshawe College. We would like to thank our sponsors, the Canada Council for the Arts and also the London Arts Council. And I want to introduce to you Roy Geiger, our professor here, who's also a friend of the Griggs, and will then please come down, Roy, and we'll have you introduce our guest today.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming today. It's great to see you here. I say that because I'm hoping you share with me the pleasure I take in Terry's work. Terry's a successful, award-winning author who lives in our area, and to me, I think that's kind of important. You know, that we see the stories that can come out of where we are interesting and engaging, strange, charming, fascinating, in ways that we might not have seen before. Terry is originally from Manitoulin Island, a strangely exotic place. She went to school here in London, perhaps not strange or exotic, but maybe she'll think it. Maybe you'll think that after when you hear what she has to say about an area like this. But she lived in London for several years and now lives in Stratford. And as I said, I mention these locations because we don't always think of our home as being worthy of storytelling. And I think Terry's work puts a lie to that. When I read her stories, I feel such great pleasure in noting how at home I feel in these locations she's describing. Yet again, you know, I'm caught by the bizarreness of the place that I'm reading about, where I apparently feel at home. For instance, in Rogue's Wedding, and perhaps, you know, this morning I was just talking to a colleague about driving to work and going through a sudden pelt of hail. And in Rogue's Wedding, a person on his wedding night is, I don't know, assaulted might be a word, by a bizarre event with lightning and fleas. He takes it as an omen. So in her disturbing, sharp and playful language, or distinctly sharp and playful language, Terry writes adult fiction. Her book of stories, Quickening, nominated for Governor General's Award, and novels The Lusty Man, Rogue's Wedding, Thought You Were Dead, which, Thought You Were Dead, a most unconventional mystery story, Thought You Were Dead, with that droll title kind of gives the hint of what it might be like. Terry also writes for young readers a trilogy of novels called Cat's Eye Corner, and most recently the title Me, a young adult book. I'm looking forward to hearing some pieces of Terry's work, and I invite you to welcome her to the podium.
Guess we're set. Thank you, Roy. That was most gracious. I mean, once you've done a few of these readings, I've done a few over the years, you've been exposed to various sorts of introductions, and that really was lovely and, you know, sort of bespoke kind of introduction. Thank you so much. We went to a reading not long ago in the fall. Very well-known poet, Don Mackay. He's, you know, he's one of the best poets in the country, and the guy introducing him got the wrong name, got the wrong poet. so we were sitting there, so being polite, sitting in the audience, we're going, no, fidgeting, no. So, but Don took it very well. Actually, the guy finally clued in that he was, you know, talking about somebody else. I thought I'd just start today by reading, I want to read an epigraph. This is just for another book. It's a book of, about writing, and it's a book you might, I just ran across it a couple weeks ago. You might be interested in, if anyone's interested in writing for young people. This is a book by Peter Carver, and it's called, well, kind of got kind of a goofy title, So You Want to Write a Children's Book. Sounds good. But I love the epigraph, and I chose it because today is the Ides of March. So it's a little bit gloomy though. The earth is degenerating these days. Bribery and corruption abound. Children no longer mind their parents. Every man wants to write a book. And it is evident that the end of the world is approaching fast. And this was written in 2800 BC. And it was found on an Assyrian tablet. And I just thought I'd read it because, you see, we're still freaking out over the same issues, and we're still using tablets. So I'm just going to do a little sampling and see how far we get with that, how much I can stand. And first from my kids' book, Neve, just a page and a half, because it too is sort of an appropriate sort of read for the Ides of March. It's about a young girl called Neve, and her name means fist in Scottish, and whose world is very gradually being overtaken by the dark. The dark, literally, the sun is dimming, and the dark figuratively, more figuratively, and people, there are superstitions that are taking over, and ignorance, and creatures coming out of that dark who peopled the world and people's imaginations a long time ago. I made up some of these creatures myself, but some I've drawn from folklore. So I'm just going to read just a page and a half, just to give you a sense of this book. I often get asked, what's the difference between writing for kids and writing for adults? And I don't really make much of a distinction. It's all part of what I do. You adhere to certain conventions, the ones that seem right, of course, when you're writing for kids. But as I say, you can address really anything in a kid's book. And the borders are shifting now too. They're not as guarded the way they used to be, in the sense that more people are reading, young adults or middle grade books or picture books, who would normally be reading, literary fiction or whatever. And the first chapter is called Weepers and Company, and it is: everything is different at night. Not looks different, is different. Neve knew this because she'd been out late exactly when she wasn't supposed to be, seeing and feeling and breathing it in, the difference. It was because of them that this was so, and because of them that she knew it. There had been signs, and although she hadn't taken them as such, she hadn't completely dismissed them either. Superstition was Graham's department. Neve was more of a let's wait and see person, more of a let's not jump to conclusions person. In the pond behind her house, she'd seen something she couldn't identify. It was long and black and moved sinuously in the water like a long scarf swirling around and around and up and down. She got down on her hands and knees to look at it. It moved as one, but it was many. Hundreds of black fry, all moving in concert, as if following a single thought. Little fishes, she said to herself, standing up and brushing the mud off her knees, practicing their synchronized swimming. Not so strange, really, although she had to admit that she'd never seen them in the pond before. What else? Spiders. Neve had nothing against spiders. She liked them very much, in fact. A spider here, a spider there. Interesting. But lately, there had been spiders here, there, everywhere. Dangling from Neve's toothbrush when she raised it up to brush her teeth before bed. Scrambling out of her pockets when she slid in her hand to retrieve a piece of string or a marble, dropping on her head from the beams in the ceiling when she zoomed by underneath. Spiders, spiders, spiders. And of all sizes and all kinds. Gran said that it was bad luck to kill a spider. Got lost here. Gran said it was bad luck to kill a spider, and Neve would never have done that anyway, bad luck or no. She was being extra careful not to squash any by mistake. This required some cautious walking and running, and much paying attention to tiny things that skittered by. She saw a tiny thing skitter by that was not a spider. It looked more like an elongated spider's shadow. But as shadows don't run free on their own, she didn't want to think that it was. That would be jumping to conclusions. So I'll leave it there and send Eve off into her adventure. There are several omens that do turn up and that she thinks very carefully about, and then things really start to change in her town, and people start to lose their memories, and some people begin to disappear, even her close friend. And it turns out that it's really up to Neve and a few other people that she teams up with to find out exactly what's going on, what's happening, what is the solution to this mystery, what can she do about it. So I will switch to another mystery of a different kind, as Roy said. It's sort of an idiosyncratic mystery. I do like to write, actually, with a bit of humor in most of my books. I kept it tamped down in Neve. It's not missing entirely, but because I wanted to accentuate the creepy in it, and in humor is one of our protections, I guess, against creepiness, isn't it? So, but that was certainly not the case in this mystery that I've written, Thought You Were Dead. When it first came out, it was, the critics were sort of scratching their heads. You're a literary writer writing this mystery, and what is it? It's been called bibliomystery, a slacker cozy, because referring to the main character in the book, who is actually a bit of a slacker. And it has been called a send-up of the mystery. It's not really, there is a bit of that, but it's just me occupying the form. The forms, different kinds of forms really interest me, and I wanted to see how I would handle something like this. And it was a lot of fun to do. So I'll just read a chunk of this, and we'll see how it goes. The first chapter is called FAQs, frequently asked questions. So I structured the first chapter on a lot of questions that the character is asking himself. The situation in the opening is the main character's name is Chalice, and he's in the doghouse. His ex-girlfriend, who is now actually married to the perfect man, tells us she's an inventor, and she tests out a lot of stuff on Chalice. And he's done something, maybe one of these inventions, that she is really annoyed about. And so it opens with Chalice dealing with his fact that he's got this unrequited love for his ex-girlfriend, and she's not talking to him. And also there's a phone call from his boss. You don't know this I'll let you know when the book opens, but she's a writer, a very prolific writer, and he's her literary researcher. She writes a lot of mysteries herself. I think that's all we need to know for now. It's FAQs. The doghouse that Chalice currently found himself in was meant for a much smaller doggy, a bad pup the size of Bunyan or Hormone. Two miscreants, if ever there were, rats with ruffs and canine pretensions. Their messes on the floor were substantial, considering, and not metaphorical in the least. Why was censure made of such inflexible material? The doghouse was clamped on his back, and he could feel it chafing and wobbling as he edged snail-wise toward the ringing phone. Rotary, none of this trilling and burtling Chalice. And guilt? It was the toxic, pressure-treated wood of the psychological lumberyard. Hello? Elaine, finally. It had been weeks. Lady, hey! Forgiven? Jill, what are you doing? Eating my crust? Good boy. End of conversation. But still, the molecular structure of the doghouse shifted. It was not exactly spandex yet, nor a swish little retirement home for his misdeeds, but matters were clearly improving, weren't they? Mrs. Hadlock called next. What a sociable afternoon. Are you free, Chalice dear? A summons disguised as a question. Would he like to eat something other than humble pie and crusts? As a bird, a body is involved. She pronounces body, incarnating it in his ear, making it all vowely and facts. Another one? Don't be cheeky. I'm not quite sure what to do with this one. I'm sure you'll think of something brilliant. Exactement. 6 for drinkies. 6 it is, Lady McBee. That woman had so much blood on her hands. Midday, and Chalice was still in his jammies. Now that there was some cause to, he sloughed those off and stepped into his Jolly Roger boxers, jeans, and pulled on a no-logo tee. As Mrs. Havelock required maturity in the footwear that crossed her threshold, he slipped on his vintage beetle boots over a pair of cotton happy-foots. Black jacket, can't go wrong with that, especially one with potato chips in the pocket. He performed a quick vanitas scan of the bathroom mirror. Ears, eyes, lips, teeth, nothing missing, run toward. Unctus bolus, not dead yet anyway, which was the family motto, of the extant members, that is, of which he happened to be the only one. Orphaned by the whole irresponsible lot of them. Forget the Sunday roast, crokinole at Christmas, crokinole and trivial pursuit at Christmas, hand-me-down, crumb-ridden toasters, and all the other dubious fringe benefits of family life. He was a free radical circulating in the social bloodstream. Chalice tipped his head back for a nose-hair check and stared admiringly up nasal canals so clear he could see all the way to Mars. Wait, that was his brain, a marvel in itself, red-hot and whirring away, formulating question after profound question. Why? So many synapses were firing that his head sounded like a bug zapper. Here was a puzzler. How could she love someone with beige hair? That's what he couldn't quite grasp. The stuff was scarily synthetic. It looked as though it belonged in the bathroom. A hair doily for the one ply, or something you might use to exfoliate your chest with. He traced the shore of his own darkish, more or less hairline, okay, less, but respectfully so as not to give it migratory ideas. His friend Hunt's forehead was now so vast, you had to walk clear on the back of him to confirm its conclusion. When had that happened? He'd have to call Hunt and inquire, but later. There were no epiphanic moments to be had driving through town, although Chalice kept his sensitivities on high alert. What would an epiphanic hour be like, he wondered? Or a whole day? Blow your brains out. He addressed the query to the almighty celebrity above. Nothing too taxing, just making conversation. My God, isn't this a sleepy town? In an effort to redeem a life sample, he scrutinized painfully tidy houses with buff siding and seamless eaves troughs, lawns killixed into astroturf, sidewalks blindingly white, cracks cleaned with a Q-tip. Where was everyone? Playing hockey? He flipped the dream catcher that was dangling from the rearview mirror, former owner, to keep it from getting clogged and sticky from the town's subpar dreaming. Ah, but heading his way. Approaching his silver, second-hand, generic auto was another silver car, newer, but exactly the same model. with a dream catcher dangling from its rearview mirror. Chellis gave the driver a comradely two-finger salute. His doppelganger glared, attempted recognition, failed, drove on. "You shit," he said mildly. "Carbon monoxide breath, dangling particle." As that was all the road rage he could muster, he motored on, satisfied. Was he too early? Mrs. Hadlock did not appreciate early, or late. He consulted his vulgari, as Elaine called his $10 mole watch. At least it covered the vile and seemingly permanent rash he'd gotten from her anti-insomnia bracelet. He should know better by now, but had unwisely agreed to test it out for her. With the cursed thing clamped on his wrist like a manacle, he had fallen asleep, but then woke up 10 minutes later screaming, after which he'd spent the rest of the night marinating in a vinaigrette of worry about unlikely occurrences involving asteroids, mice, and a severed head on a cake plate. It was only 4-ish, way too. Chellis didn't want to end up in Mrs. H's bad books, of which she had a few, although through no fault of his own. He does his bit. Clearly there was time for a detour, possibly down Elaine Street, an accidental drive-by, no stopping, not even if she happens to be standing in the middle of the road and flags him down, not on your life. He hit the gas and came up behind a hybrid car with a "Save the Adverb" bumper sticker. Green sentiment, sense of humor, worthy cause, potential pantheist behind the wheel, bisexual haircut, color that didn't match the upholstery. Man, Chellis approved of the whole package. His spirits lifted. He honked the horn as he peeled past, rolled down the window and shouted, "You done good." He pulled into Panin's Variety for a package of breath mints in preparation for a possible communicative incident. It wasn't out of the question. Conversation could ensue. Hypothetically, Elaine had been known to stand stock still in her driveway for minutes on end, clutching a bag of groceries, thinking. He'd arrive on the scene and awaken her from her reverie with his minty sweet breath, Zephyrus on wheels. Her bag of groceries would hit the blacktop, causing the eggs to tremble perilously in their carton and damaging Vaughn's zucchini, or his bananas, whatever. They would engage in intercourse, swift and hard, for she would promptly tell him to fuck off and die. Turns out smarty Elaine will have been working on the final, crucial details for her axiomatic, a labor-saving device for the Lizzie Wardens of the world, or some such invention. And he will have interrupted her, yet again, sending her go train of thought zipping out of the station. Again? Yes, again, and would he please just go away? At least she said please, hypothetically. That was nice. Mrs. Panin was behind the counter looking grim. He had to wonder if the little Panin heads had Panin eyes again. Chellis chuckled, and she offered him a tight smile back. "Murder, Chellis." She held up a star and pointed to the front page colored photo of 2 policemen and a suit crouched over a blanket swathed lump on the ground, with its feet sticking out, unshod and bluish, none too fresh. "Terrible. Well, it's Toronto for you." No, it happened in Claymore." "Claymore? Good heavens. Practically next door." "What does it say? Some family dispute, you know what they're like over that way. Domestic deviants, all, even the toddlers." So that's where everyone was, rubbernecking at the scene of the crime. A man, unidentified, not a local, a knife. She stabbed a finger into the middle of her forehead. Got that from Richard. You know Richard Major? He's over by the low-acid orange juice. Chellis almost broke his neck, snapping it to look the other way, toward the door, thinking, run away. But he'd already been spotted and tagged. The guy was headed down the aisle toward him, moving with a slick strut as if his ankles were oiled. Richard Major, a.k.a. Dick Major, a.k.a. Major Dick, set a slim, shapely bottle on the counter, some ginseng ginkgo green tea EDTA concoction with writhing serpents on the label, and gave Chalice a brisk clap on the shoulder. "Hey, Chilly Willy, man, is that really you? Hey, Dicker." High school acquaintance, say no more. He checked for brews later. "Man, this I cannot believe. Someone told me you were, gone. Been keeping a low profile, Dick. Not that low. Ah, so, you back for a visit or what? Can't believe we all used to live in this hick town, eh?" "Yeah. Ha. Yourself?" The big smoke. Reputation management. Love it. Dick gave the pocket of his slinky, pricey suit a promiscuous pat, slid his hand in and pulled out a platinum card. This he presented to Mrs. Pnin, who was furiously scratching her head. "You? Me? Consulting." Chalice delivered this not entirely fabulous piece of information in a brusque, manly tone, as if blocking a punch. "That Lexus out front yours, Dick? The one he dinged for so slightly on the passenger side while wrenching open his own cheap piece of crap car door?" "Yup." Dick smiled. "Nice." Chalice smiled back. While waiting for Dick to sign for the drink, Mrs. Pnin was now absent-mindedly scratching her plump white arm with his card, scooping her DNA onto it like dip on a cracker. This reminded Chalice of that cadaverous appetizer Elaine made last year for Halloween. Goblin green it was, and served it in a cunning pottery skull. Exhumus, she called it. It was quite a hit. "Say what you will about this murder business," Chalice asked. "Say, what about this murder business?" Chalice asked. "I hear you got the inside story, Dick, and didn't you always?" "Ah, not me. Know some of the cops involved. They don't give much away." He turned aside in the receipt and retrieved his card. His signature amounted to nothing more than a tail with a tiny head, a perky sperm. "Thanks, Mrs. Pnin. Gotta go. Good seeing you again, Chilly. Oh, wait till I tell Di, man. She always thought you were hilarious. Ever in the city, eh? Look us up." "Sure thing." "How about that? Old Dicker had gotten hitched to Diane Ryder, one of the Glyceride twins. Di and Mona, very bad for your health. And now it was Dick and Di? There was a moralistic little slogan for you. Drive carefully, was his chirpy addendum. It was the most bruising thing he could think to say, but apropos, considering that Richard Major had killed Elaine's best friend. Chalice perused the breathments moodily. "So, Mrs. Pnin, how are the kids these days? They enjoying school?" Mrs. Pnin resumed her grim expression. "Lice," she said. So I believe the mystery there. How are we doing time-wise? I can read another little snippet from the book, or we do one more little snippet, like a couple pages, and then we can ask some questions? Questions? Everyone ask questions, right? Okay. Now this is from a book called Rogue's Wedding, originally titled Iconoclast Journal. We're always saying, you should have kept that title. It makes it sound like a wild strip or something, but it's not really. It's, people wonder about how to write characterization. You get sort of questions about how to do sort of stuff in writing that. And this, I would probably use this as an example of maybe not, how you shouldn't write characterization. I don't know. Basically, in this story, as Roy was saying, the character flees on his wedding night. Greta Smolders flees on his wedding night, and his new wife pursues him. And at one point, mainly just to she hasn't caught up with him yet. She pursues him all the way up from London down to an island, actually. And he walks and runs the whole way. But he managed to escape her for the most part. But to really, part of her plan, the way to really get back at him is she takes the lover. And this is just a couple of pages, description of this lover and how she finds him. and his name is Hugh. And so the scene is 1898, so it's, you know, it's sort of old-timey. Hugh, he was in need, cack-handed, and her scene. An unusual migration had occurred on his person in that he had a mound of orange pubic hair growing on top of his head, while a silken, straight as a gut sporran bewigged his manhood. His facial features were like parasitical entities that had nuzzled into his skin and clung there with a bat-like tenacity. Flame-rimmed eyes, nose stump, mouth slash, ears that rode as flat to the head as scabs. Generally speaking, if he was a horse, you'd pass him by. A goat, you'd say, no thanks. A dog, you'd head in the opposite direction. But he was a man, and of all the men Abbas could have chosen, she chose him. He saw himself as a piss artist and a real piss cutter, but he was really just a piss head. A dumb clock born in a gargoyle, plucked out of a tumult, a chaos of flying boots and fists that in other circles is known as a family. He was too mean for a name. Come here, you, his mother would say as he tried to skulk out the door. It was almost impossible to get by that brute of a woman without receiving a ringing clout on the head. It's no wonder he was so physically contracted. His stature was foreshortened from ducking. His ears flattened protectively close to his head. His nose retracted telescopically into his face. You. That's all I ever got. A pronoun knuckle-dusted into his skull, which at least evolved over time out of the pre-nominal muck into Hugh. A proper noun, if not a proper gentleman. He looked solid enough, was built of enduring material, and was covered in freckles that overlapped like mail. But he tended to slosh when he walked, like a half-empty bottle. He leaked. Water ran out of his eyes, his nose. He drooled. He sweat. He pissed cataracts in the morning. He woke pissed proud. She thought of him as containing a lake. The pressure bursting through his seams, the damp impression he left on the sheets, which was a bit too poetic for her to think and for him to be. He was well lubricated, was all. And she called it out of him, made him weep like a boiler, with pain, mostly. Her rising heat, her prickly female dander, made him gasp and sneeze. He was a beached carp on the hard shore of her. Alice found him behind a blockade of bottles in a dark back corner of the mansion house barroom. She had to step over a dead man to get to him and cut her way through a layered curtain of smoke. Not to mention the obstructing stares of the other patrons, tough, bruised, beak-faced locals, mill hands and sailors, who were stunned by her sudden presence among them. A female. How easily she strode through the door. How coolly she surveyed them all. The dead man, well, they were used to him. But she trailed trouble after her like a widow's black entangling weeds. You, she said, sinking her fingers into the russet wool on Hugh's head and jerking it roughly upward, pulling it into what thin annunciatory light there was to peer into his face. All right, you'll do. Come with me. They all marveled. Pat Sloane, the farrier, crossed himself twice, forwards and backwards, appealing to whatever deity, god or devil, might be attending. How did she know his name? So, I want to say, when I finished Neve, about the spiders, and they do, in the book, they come and there's more and more spiders, and there's more webs that appear over, over everything, over trees. But I just haven't, and somebody else may have seen this. I saw this online a couple of days ago. In Australia, there's a flood in some part of southern part of Australia. I forget where exactly, but these wolf spiders have been coming out and going to higher ground, slightly higher ground, and so over the fields there's all this thick layers of webbing, and up in the trees, all these spiders, and so it just seemed, there's a sort of a picture in the book. Depicting this sort of situation, but it just seems sort of odd to see, again, like in today's art, or in today's life, I don't know. Oh, and the illustrations in my book, they're pretty cool. They're done by my son. So. Pretty creepy. They added quite a bit to the book. And there are some bookmarks. Before you go, help yourself to the bookmarks. The bookmarks are free. Because there's one of the pictures that I really particularly like on the bookmark. One of the characters called Murderous. And this book is also illustrated, actually, but not by my son. So it's kind of nice to have an adult book that's got illustrations in this book, so you can see how he depicted the character. Are there any questions? And I'd be happy to answer them if I can. I know it's always hard to get started. Is there any questions? I read here before. Did you mention that, Roy? I read here, yeah, before. Yes, right. This is about 20 years ago. So it's nice to be back again. Can't see anything else I can rattle on about.
No,
There's a question. Yeah,
How long have you been writing for?
Oh, gee. I've sort of lost track of that. I think my first published story came out in 1982. So most people here weren't even born yet, I'm sure. But even, since I was a kid, actually, I was one of those kids who thought they wanted to be a writer, and actually silly enough to do it, right? Crazy enough to go ahead and do it. Yes?
So the illustrations that your son did, were there anything that you would have thought in your head when you were writing?
Sorry, I sort of missed the first part of your statement there.
Like the illustrations your son,
Oh, yeah.
were there anything like what you thought when you were
Because he didn't depict he didn't depict the main character, which I really like, because I like people to imagine what the main character looks like. He did a subsequent illustration of her, which is on a website. It didn't appear in the book, but he's from the back, so you can't really see her. I was pretty thrilled actually with the illustration. I didn't really have, because of the things he chose to do, many of the objects, sort of magical objects in the book. And as I say, that one character that I know you think of them differently in your own head, but I was really pleased with what he did. In this book, I Thought You Were Dead, when I first saw the illustrations for the main character, I was appalled, actually. Because I thought, it doesn't look like, he looked like he's a slacker, but he's, he's kind of cute. and young. So the illustrator had done this kind of schlumpy, dumpy, goofy-looking guy, and so I thought, how do you approach this? But he was very, no problem. So he changed it, and even asked me, what I thought, what I would like. So there wasn't a big ego involved there or anything. So I don't know. I know apparently in a lot of situations, you have a children's book and that, the publishers keep the illustrators and the writers separate, and I don't want them to communicate. I guess maybe they feel the writer will interfere, or for whatever reason, but I don't know. I think it's fair. The writer should have some input. No, I was pleased with those stories. Any other questions?
Hi, Terry. Your characters are so endearing. When you look back, is there a favorite one that you carry with you, that is most memorable to you?
Oh, gee. I don't know. Yeah, well, you're like your mother, you love them all, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I sort of like the Holmes character in Lusty Man. It was my first novel. And this particular character, Holmes, he's a diver, but he set up a living room underwater. So you're walking by in the dock, they look down, because he collects stuff from the ships that have this circumvent. And there are a lot of old ships that have gone, have gone under in the Great Lakes. And he's collected various sort of things, and he's even got a TV down there. But just fish from these kind of TV. Things, rugs floating around. But people walking by the dock look down, see somebody sitting down there. Is in a living room. It's called the Blue Room, actually, of course. So I'm fond of that character, but I do like you do think of the characters after when you finish it. You finish a book with your pick, and even though the books themselves sort of fall away. Yes.
I have several questions, and one is about the dramatic voices. The way you read, very dramatic. Have you thought about writing screenplays or?
No, I haven't.
Or plays for theatrical presentation?
I sort of wonder about it. I understand plays are very difficult to write because I'm so attached to the language and I like being able to write paragraphs and full sentences, and I don't know if how I would work with just straight dialogue. That would be quite a different discipline. That's supposed to be very interesting to do. When I first started writing, I didn't use dialogue much at all. One little bit, and then I go back down into the safety of the prose, right? But I've gotten more used to doing it. This Thought You Were Dead is available on an audio tape, or it's Iambic Books CD, where they got a writer or a actor reading it in a sort of very noirish. He did a great job, but I always stumble when I come to Crokinole now because he pronounced it Crokinole. And we laugh so much about Crokinole. Now he's starting to pronounce it Crokinole. But he did a really good job. As far as writing plays, I don't know. Maybe, never know. Other, as I say, forms attract me. It's sort of like a hermit crab, right? You see an empty shell, and I go.
So my other question is about your style, because it's quite different and novel, and you put things together that are, they're really unusual juxtapositions, like beached carp on the hard shore of Her.
That's my island upbringing.
How do you do that? How much time do you spend in revision, and how do you get your ideas? These are all things that I would think would interest novice writers.
Yeah, probably there are lots of writers in the room. I do a lot of revision as I go. I'm one of those writers, one of those obsessive writers. I don't write it all out, which would make a lot of sense to do. You write the whole manuscript. I have to start back at the beginning. I sort of have to get the first sentence right and move on from there. And so maybe it's the focus of, because I'm spending so much time with little bits, and I'm very interested in the texture of the language, and maybe because just that particular focus draws more things to the individual sentences, rather than zooming through and then coming back. I'm a very slow writer. So probably I just maybe feel like I need to pull more and more things to satisfy whatever it is that I'm trying to capture in the text.
How slow is slow?
When I'm really, when things aren't happening much, and I think, I really got to get more down here, I set myself a page. I've got to do a page a day. That's not much, really, some writers, but to me that's like a marathon, get that page down. I've loosened up a bit, and I remember one early review of my first novel saying, if she could just let some air into the prose, so it wouldn't be so compact and so much hard work to read. So I think I have loosened up a fair bit, and there are easier sentences to take, and you don't have to work so hard to read them.
There's some other questions over here.
Yes.
Who's your favorite authors?
Favorite authors? I really like the stylists. The reference here, those who's familiar with Nabokov, that Pin's variety. Pin is his book of Vladimir Nabokov. And so I really love Nabokov. So, and I like a lot of their British writers, actually. Martin Amis and Hilary Mantel. I like her quite a bit. So I like word-rich writers. I'm not much for the sort of the Puritan cheese-paring sort of types. You're Hemingway type. I know they can have a great impact, but I like to see a good serving on the page of words and interesting stuff happening verbally. So the writers that sort of like that. Jeff Dyer is someone I've been reading lately. He's great. He's so subversive. He doesn't follow really doesn't follow the rules, which is fun too. No. And lots of others. Dickens for sure. Any other questions? Yay!
I was wondering what inspires more of your storylines to write, because from the sounds like sometimes they do kind of different, it's also all different age categories. It just could be
Right.
your Google need, and it's more like the young adults, whereas some of the other ones are more adults, going beyond just your young adults. What inspires each of them?
Right one or the other, you mean, or just in general?
No, what inspires your storylines, figuring out what would be more age appropriate.
Right. Well, so I say there are, as I was saying, there are some differences, of course, between the work for younger readers and the adults. And as I say, there's some conventions that I do follow when I'm writing for the books for younger kids. And, you want a young protagonist, and I'm not going to, the age group that I'm sort of thinking about. I'm not going to be writing a, romantic relationship. It's sort of, I write for the pre-hormonal group, I think. So, if it was YA, it would be different. So there's certain things that just feel right in terms of certain things that, the way you structure the work. But I, handle all sorts of difficult things, I think, without any problem. There's a lot of death happening in deep and dark subject matter. But, you can do it without overthinking it. There's no sexual, stuff in the kids' books, and the language is, but that's just what I like anyway, like that sort of innocence. What inspires them? Generally, it's just hard to say. I think some say you write what you find mysterious, things that attract you, that you find mysterious in life, or you might, something that you have this kind of obsessive relationship with, some issues or memories. It's funny where inspiration comes from it. I keep notebooks of things that I'll read, maybe a story in the paper or something at all. It'll just suddenly open up, and it'll just seem like there'll be possibilities there. It can be a word, it can be, as I say, an unusual story, something you overhear. I don't know what twigs some things, not other things, that just, they seem to glow, or just words alone I find pretty interesting. I could pull a story out of a word sometimes. So, I don't know, the answer to that question really is I don't know. Yeah.
Do your books still have the same meaning to you when you've read them and you've revised your work so many times? I know sometimes it's hard to feel the same way about your works when you don't have that distance. Do you find that to be challenging at all, or do you take that step back and then reread it with a new perspective?
Yeah, well, usually when you're finished, I find the book just drops out of your life, gone. But, so like today, coming here, I had to sort of remind myself what books were about. Because I'm now working on something else that's, caught my interest. But when I read them, I'm reminded, and I'm drawn back into the time when I was writing them, and what interested me about them, and why I wrote them, and so it's good to be able to forget about them, I guess. But I'm and you read some things critically and think, oh, that could have been better, but you give it your best shot at the time. I don't know if that answered the question.
Can you just, I still have lots more questions too, okay? Do you pre-plan your plot lines, or does the plot evolve as you write? And secondly, how successful are you? You were telling us about being at Harbourfront and having, 4,000 kids in an audience.
Not my usual audience. No, I don't work out the plot ahead of time. I found that impossible to do. I feel it would be great if I could do it, but I've never been able to do it. And I was really pleased. I ran across a quote from Philip Roth a while ago. I even wrote it in one of my notebooks. Something to the effect that every day you're working out on the page you're on. You're working out the problems of the plot, and that's what pulls you forward and works against the frustration the writing sometimes creates, because it's you don't know what's coming next. But he says the novel will speak to you. It sounds kind of wishy-washy, but it will tell you the story as you proceed. And if you've got faith, you have to have a fair bit of faith to do this. But it does happen, right? You think, God, what's going to happen next? And then, lo and behold, if you sit down there and focus it out and get into that space, the writing space, and things do occur. So you can really rely on that. Other people, of course, plot right to the very last period and know all about their characters and write backgrounds of their characters. And there are different ways of approaching it, but I never been able to do that.
Are you making any money then doing this?
Well, the answer to that is supposed to be, oh yeah, loads. But no, not really. But just I feel like I have my freedom to do it. I mean, they're really doing a good job, but I've managed so far. I wouldn't recommend it if you're want to live a really lush lifestyle. But do all right. And it's really all I've ever wanted to do, and I still want to do it. I mean, I went through a little stage a while ago, a little period where I felt like I was in the dark woods, and I thought, oh, that's the end. I probably won't be writing anymore, and just felt sort of the bottom drop out. But then I got over that.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, everyone.